So a $1 billion Bitcoin whale just closed his long position, and now he is shorting with just under $1 billion. In today's video, we'll be talking about why that might be and if we are potentially repeating what happened back in 2021. We'll be looking at if this theory has any kind of validity, and we'll also be going over how the liquidity is looking in the market. If you enjoy the content, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. Without further ado, let's jump right into the video. So firstly, our Bitcoin whale has shifted from long to short. And as we can see here, the value of his short is now sitting right around $850 million, just shy of $1 billion. Now, if we take a look at his P&L, we can see that in the past 24 hours, he is down about $18 million. However, over the past 30 days, he is still up $30 million. This guy certainly has to have a lot of money to switch his bias so quickly. As soon as Bitcoin got a little bit closer to his liquidation price, he decided to go short. So we can see his transaction here on Hyperscan, and we can see he opened his short after closing all of those longs. Now, losing just shy of $18 million in 24 hours is a lot, but can he stand to profit on his most recent Bitcoin short? We'll be talking about exactly this. So right now, looking at the Bitcoin price action, if we check out this chart, it doesn't look that bad. We're currently sitting right around 107.6K, and we did wick down a little bit further, but ultimately we are still above the daily support of 106.2K, which we've discussed on the channel as the all-important level. The reason being, we never had a previous daily close above that level, and then as soon as we got a couple of those confirmations, that was enough for me to say that, hey, we're going to be making an all-time high. And now that we're chopping above this level, it is a positive sign, but there are still some worrying signs in the market. And one of the worrying signs is trying to compare this price action to how 2021 played out. We can see on this chart here that in 2021, we got a massive rally, then we got a severe correction, then we got another massive rally, only just breaking above the previous high and then coming back down. Now, is this going to be the case for 2025 and for the entirety of this cycle? Because we can see that this is starting to look eerily similar. And if I actually draw this out and we take the pattern that we saw back in 2021, we can see here that if I overlay this onto what Bitcoin is currently doing, it does look pretty similar. Did we get that first pump into this resistance, coming back down, a pretty aggressive move down over 30%, and then another pump making that new high? If I adjust this ever so slightly, we can see that this is starting to look very, very similar. And obviously in 2021, we know what happens next, a massive bear market. Now, I'm not calling for a bear market, but I'm only showing you what the charts are currently suggesting. And so long as we can, on the daily time frames, continue to hold above 106.2K, there is no cause for concern. And actually, if we do look at the weekly chart here, we can see that sure, we got that wick above the previous all-time high. We weren't able to hold it as support. However, this is still going to be the highest weekly close ever, even after last week. So far, this is looking okay, but there is still several hours before the weekly close. And if we start to get those confirmations that, hey, maybe this is going to start to roll over, I would be concerned. Also, maybe this would give the opportunity for our whale to finally start making some profits, because ultimately he did enter the short, not at the greatest level, $107,000, and right now the price is sitting at 107.4K. So he is still currently sitting in a $3 million loss at the time of recording this video. Obviously, this can change very quickly, but just so you're aware, this is what his position is looking like. Now, what I'm looking for here for the most bullish confirmation, and this is honestly what I was hoping for this week, would be to get a candle above this key level, 109.5K, depending on which exchange you use. The reason that's so important is because that was the previous all-time high, and if we can confirm that we're going to consolidate above that previous all-time high, we are off to the races, and Bitcoin will be moving much, much higher. For now, the line in the sand here is 106.2K. We hold that level as support. There is technically not that much cause for concern. However, if we start breaking below there, the next key level you'd want to look at here is right in this region, right between 102K all the way up to around 105K. There's a lot of liquidity there, so there is a chance that we could go and tap these levels. But first, pay attention to 106.2K, and let's hope that next week, if not this week, we can get a close above 109.5K, not only breaking above the previous all-time high, but also holding above there on the daily and weekly for that extra support. Now, Taking a look at the total crypto market cap excluding Bitcoin, this paints the picture that we've been talking about on the channel for months. We can see that we're getting rejected now at the $1.25 trillion level, and the stochastic RSI is getting quite overheated here. So excluding Bitcoin, it does look like we can get a little bit more of a correction, and this was an overheated run. Now, this is not what you want to hear for altcoins because the high was actually set in the previous bull market cycle. This cycle, we weren't even able to break above this previous wick right around $1.7 trillion. We only made it just a smudge above $1.6 trillion. So what you'd want to hope for a proper altcoin season would be to, first of all, confirm above $1.25 trillion, and then second of all, be able to break through this resistance and finally set a new high that was actually set in the previous cycle. So if we take a look at the liquidity here, there is an interesting picture that I want to paint, and that is in the past 24 hours, a lot of liquidity has been built up to the upside. What this means is more and more people are transitioning into shorting the market. And if we take a look at the weekly time frame, we can see that there's still a lot more liquidity to the downside here, which would suggest to me that Bitcoin could probably move lower. Another reason being is, you know, my favorite chart, the Bitcoin exchange liquidation map. You can find this on CoinGlass, by the way. And we can see here that yes, there is still a lot more cumulative long liquidation leverage, which means that overall there are still a lot more longs in the market, but we cannot ignore the fact that this is ever so slightly starting to creep up, the cumulative short liquidation leverage. If you've been watching the channel, you'll know that last week there was actually 10 times more longs in the market than shorts, and this line was a lot lower, the cumulative short liquidation leverage. Now, however, there is only 2 times more longs in the markets compared to shorts. And so this would tell me that we're starting to see a little bit of a shift. When this starts pumping aggressively and the cumulative short liquidation leverage is equal to the cumulative long liquidation leverage, that is a good sign that we're about to flip. Now, this isn't a perfect predictor of where the price will go. However, when we saw that there was 10 times more longs in the market, it did tell us that we should be expecting some kind of pullback in the near future. And that is exactly what we're getting right now. The question is, can we continue to consolidate above 106.2K at the very least and hold this level as support before targeting the previous all-time high and then holding that level as support and then going much higher? Or are we going to get rejected here as we did get from the previous all-time high and now go below 106.2K? Remember, this is a really illiquid environment, especially over the course of the weekend, but Monday is also a holiday in the United States, so you need to be aware of that because the price can really shake people out when we least expect it in these relatively illiquid environments. Now, if we take a look at the 1 hour time frame, we can see that every time that we flirted with the previous all-time high right around 109.5K, we did get rejected. One over here, then we came back down all the way to 106.8K, another pump to try and see if we can break above it during this weekend, and then we came all the way back down to around 106.8K again. Potentially, this could be a double bottom to give us enough fuel on these shorter time frames to go ahead and really break through this level once again, and then hopefully we can close above that level. But I'm not blind to the fact that there are still more longs in the markets than shorts, despite the fact that a lot of people have recently started shorting. Back to this liquidity chart, we can see that if Bitcoin were to have a little bit of a more severe correction and come down to $95,000, it would liquidate $16.75 billion worth of longs. However, if Bitcoin were to go all the way up to just around $123,000, which is a pretty high target, we would get just over $7 billion in cumulative short liquidation leverage. So make sure you're paying attention to this chart. Would highly recommend that you follow it. As I said, it's not a perfect short-term prediction of the price, but it can tell us where the price will likely tend to go. And that's why I was recently expecting some kind of correction, which is exactly what we got. Now, if we are to hold these levels as support and you want to trade this price action, you do have the first link in my description down below, which brings you directly to Bluffin. With my link and my link alone, you can earn a 15% trading bonus cashback, which means you can earn up to $5,000 for free for making a deposit and trading as you normally would. You also have the second link in my description down below, which brings you directly to Weeks. You can get up to $30,000 in rewards for trading as you normally would. You also get a free $100 if you're one of the first 100 users that sign up with my link down below. And if you do trade with a lot of volume, you will get a $2,000 reward deposited directly into your account. That is the second link in my description down below. First link, Bluffin. Second link, Weeks. And the third link is my free Telegram community if that interests you. So we talked about Bitcoin and we talked about the total crypto market cap excluding Bitcoin, and this paints the same picture that we've been talking about. ETH Bitcoin is still struggling ever so slightly despite having a massive bounce. And again, I want you to keep your eyes on this bull market support band because we've had some strong pumps by ETH Bitcoin before, only to hover over the support band or just get rejected right at it. As we can see, one there, two here, another pretty big pump here, and then this was the most recent pump, a massive pump holding the previous 2019 low as support. Let's see if we can break above here, but personally, my base case here is because monetary policy hasn't changed, we are likely to at least form a higher double bottom. If that's the case, I'd be looking for us to move much, much higher, and I do think that this could roll over the next week. And let's look at Bitcoin dominance. This is the weekly time frame. I'll be very quick. All of your favorite influencers were yelling about an altcoin season a few days ago, and what happened? Check it out. We held the bull market support band as support, and now this weekly candle is looking quite bullish. If we go on the shorter time frames, you can see exactly what they were potentially talking about, and that is the fact that we came down like this on the 1 hour time frame, and everyone was calling for that altcoin season. But when it comes to these kinds of metrics, Bitcoin dominance, ETH against Bitcoin, I do like to look at longer time frames because they provide a little bit of a more accurate picture. For example, yes, we had some daily red candles, but as soon as we got a massive bullish hammer candle, it did suggest to me that we would be moving higher. And then of course, the more you zoom out, the more accurate that these metrics can actually get, like this bullish candle over here, suggesting that we will be going and probably breaking this high around 65.38%, depending on which chart you use. So for these metrics, make sure you're always zooming out because it paints a clearer picture. Overall, what I want to see for Bitcoin is at the bare minimum hold above 106.2K on the daily time frame. Look, the best case scenario would have obviously been if we can hold above 109.5K on the weekly time frame, suggesting a very bullish week to come. However, we didn't get that, and right now the bulls are fighting to keep this candle green. If Bitcoin closes below 106.5K, this candle will turn red, and at that point, I would be targeting lower levels for Bitcoin. Make sure you're aware because this could be repeating what happened back in 2021. Now, if I go back to the 2021 chart, we can see that after forming this low, we did come back down to test the high of that low before pumping. Right now, these are a ton of bullish weekly candles for Bitcoin. Actually, let's go ahead and count them out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bullish weekly candles for Bitcoin. It only made sense that we were going to get some sort of correction. Now the question is, instead of overlaying this chart as we just did, grabbing this and grabbing all the way down to here, and then seeing that it does look eerily similar, we didn't get that mid correction over here. We just went essentially straight up. So potentially what could be happening if Bitcoin is to go higher is that we come back down and then finally get that correction, maybe around this previous range, hold it as support, which would actually coincide with the previous breakdown region. This is a lot more longer term compared to what we were just talking about, but hear me out. So we go ahead and touch that previous breakdown region, and then we go and we start popping off, touching this key trend line as resistance. Maybe it's later in the cycle. My base case has actually been that we would be making the high of the cycle towards the end of Q3, perhaps Q4 of this year. Maybe it can surprise me and happen this summer. I would be very happy if it did, but right now I'm just reacting to the price action and trading the market as is. And that sums up today's video. After a very bullish week for Bitcoin, we are starting to close closer and closer to a potential red candle. Now, if we hold above 106.2K on the daily time frame for multiple days more, that would still be very bullish. However, we start breaking back below there and we could be in for a little bit of a more severe correction, knowing that there are still over 2 times more longs in the market than shorts. That is still an improvement to last time where we covered this liquidation chart and there was literally 10 times more longs. So right now, a little bit of a liquidity grab. Let's see what happens. Monday is a holiday in the US, meaning that the stock market is closed. So if you're trading this market, make sure that you're extra vigilant. And actually, just quickly, right before I wrap up this video, this just came out as I was recording. Michael Saylor will likely be buying some more Bitcoin because he put out his famous tweet on the Sunday. Tomorrow, he will likely announce how much Bitcoin they were accumulating over the past week. But you can see I only buy Bitcoin with money I can't afford to lose. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe, and I'll see you in tomorrow's video.